Welcome to our video on KingswaySoft SSIS Integration Toolkit for Directory Services. The toolkit is split into three categories of components. The Active Directory components to facilitate your integration or migration with Active Directory both on-premises and Azure. The LDAP components to facilitate your integration or migration with LDAP connections. And the Google Directory component to facilitate your integration or migration with Google Directory Services. We will be going over each of them in detail. To begin with, let's look at the Active Directory components. As a first step, after you have installed the toolkit, open an Integration Services project, and within a package inside it, right-click on the Connection Manager section. From the list that comes up, choose the Active Directory Connection Manager. Double-click on it or select Add to open up the Connection Manager user interface. You will see that there is a drop-down on the component that allows you to switch between Azure or on-premise Active Directory. Let's choose on-premise, which will allow you to specify the settings to build the connection with your local or on-premise Active Directory. The domain field lets you specify the domain name of the directory to connect to. The domain name should be a fully qualified name. The username field allows you to specify the user account that you want to use to connect to your Active Directory. Depending on how you want to manipulate your data, the user account needs to have proper privileges to do so. The password field allows you to specify the password for the above user account in order to authenticate with Active Directory. Once done, you can verify by clicking on Test Connection button. Now, as an additional setting, you can specify the context binding according to your Active Directory setup. From the drop-down, you can choose between few values, and by default, negotiate sealing and signing are checked. Next, to go over the next connection type, let's create a new Active Directory Connection Manager, and from the drop-down for connection type, choose Azure. This supports OAuth authentication. Click on Generate Token File, which will open up the token generator. In order to get the values for OAuth authentication, you would need to navigate to Azure Portal and select App Registrations. In Azure Portal, within App Registrations, you would see all your applications created within the tenant. And to create a new app, click on New Registration. Provide a new name to identify the app and then choose the tenant type as single or multi-tenant. The redirect URI is required when it comes to authorization code, as we would need a URL to which the token code needs to be redirected to. For this reason, choose the platform as web and then provide any generic URL of your choice. Note that this needs to be a valid HTTP URL without any redirections of its own and can even be localhost. Going to the app we have already created, you could see that in the overview page, the client ID, tenant and other information is available. The secret, if not yet created, or if it's expired, can be generated from the certificate and secrets page. Click on New Client Secret and provide a name as an identifier and then choose the expiry for it. Note that once you generate the secret, you would need to copy out the value in the value field and not the secret ID. The value is the secret and which will be used for the authentication. This will need to be saved at the time you create it, as in the next login the value will be masked and not retrievable. Once you have the required credentials, enter them in the fields allocated in the Connection Manager token generator. Enter the scope as required based on what level of access and permissions you would like to provide for the OAuth app. When the option Use Default Browser to Sign In is checked, the Sign In and Authorize button will open your default browser in order to complete the authentication. When this option is unchecked, the Sign In and Authorize button will complete the entire authentication process inside the toolkit. Let's uncheck it and click on the button, which will open the window as seen. Enter your credentials, which will authorize the app. Follow through the prompts, and once done, it will return to the token generator and will ask you to enter an alphanumeric password. This is to decrypt the sensitive information in the token file. Save the file in a location and you would see that the token file details are displayed in the Connection Manager. Click on Test Connection to verify the connection. One thing to note here would be that we support both file system path for on-prem deployments and shared access signature SaaS URL generated from a location in Azure Blob Storage for the token files for cloud-based deployment models. Now, moving over to the advanced settings, the proxy mode option allows you to specify how you want to configure the proxy server settings. There are three options available: No Proxy, Auto Detect using System Configured Proxy, Manual for providing the proxy details manually. And the proxy authentication required fields can be checked to enter additional credentials for the proxy. The timeout option allows you to specify a timeout value in seconds for the connection. The default value is 120 seconds. The API throttling rate option allows you to restrict how many requests you want to send to Azure Active Directory per second. This rate is set to 10 and you can adjust upward from there to optimize your throughput without exceeding the rate limit. The retry on intermittent errors is designed to help recover from possible intermittent outages or disruption of service. It prevents the integration process from stopping due to temporary issues. Enabling this option will allow service calls to be retried for certain failures. A service call may be retried up to 4 times at different backoff intervals before an exception is fired. Please note that the advanced settings page is only available for Azure connection types. Click on OK to save and close the connection manager. Once you have the connection manager set up, drag and drop the Active Directory source component from the SSIS toolbox within a data flow task. Double-click to open the source user interface and choose the connection manager from the list of available ones. You would see that we have 2 connections created, one for each on-prem and Azure. Let's select the on-prem one first. The source object dropdown lists all of the currently supported objects that you can read from. The available objects include user, group, computer, organizational unit. The container path option lets you specify the directory path. You can specify it manually or click on the ellipsis button and choose from the path browser. The paging size option allows you to specify how many records you want to retrieve each time. The default value is 100. You may use the search criteria to filter particular records according to your requirements. The Active Directory search criteria filter follows the lightweight directory access protocol LDAP filtering format. For example, in our search criteria here, we are performing an AND condition-based filtering on user principal object and object category. Navigate to the columns page of the Active Directory source component, which will show you all available attributes from the object that you specified on the general page. You can choose to read all columns or choose only those that are required in your data flow. This is a recommended approach with respect to performance. You can click on Hide Unselected Fields to only see those fields that are selected. On the top of the grid, there is an Add button to manually add any custom fields that you may have. If you select this button, you can enter the name of the field and then select the appropriate data type from the list that shows up. And finally, choose the length as required and click on OK to add the custom field to the metadata. Note that the data type can be toggled for whichever fields allowed to accommodate for larger lengths if required. The Reset Component button can be used to refresh the component metadata without having to recreate the component. And the FX button will launch the SSIS expression editor to enable dynamic updates of the property at runtime. Now, let's choose the Azure Active Directory connection manager that we had created. The user interface pretty much remains the same, except for the fact that the field container path is no longer relevant and hence that's removed. In the source object dropdown, you would see some additional objects which are only for Azure AD, and a couple of them that were specific for on-prem AD are not present in the list. The search criteria varies in terms of functionality, and you can choose the filters from the drop-down as shown here. In our example, we are equating user principal name and display name against its values using an AND operator. The filters have equality operators as well as starts with operators too. The insert variable option allows you to put in a variable in the search criteria to make it dynamic at runtime. The columns page has the metadata of the chosen object, and the Add button gives you the option to add extension attributes for Azure Active Directory. Saving it will add the extension attributes to the existing metadata. Click on OK to save and close the component. Now, we move on to the Active Directory destination component. Here, we have added a data spawner component to act as a dummy source for the data flow. From the SSIS toolbox, drag and drop the Active Directory destination component and connect the source to it. First, let's choose the on-prem connection manager from the list of available connections. The action option allows you to specify how data should be written to Active Directory. There are currently 5 supported action types available when choosing on-prem connections. Create, for creating new records, update to update existing ones based on the primary key field, which is user principal name, delete to delete records, upsert to update or create records based on primary field, which is user principal name, and move to move or rename an AD object. Let's choose upsert and then select the appropriate destination object from the list. In on-prem instance, you could write to users, group membership, contact, and organizational unit. Let's select user and move to the record lookup/matching settings. This is available for update and upsert actions. The record identifier can be chosen, which allows to match the record using either primary key or using manually specified keys. The handling of multiple matches option allows you to specify what action will be taken when multiple matches are found. There are 4 options available. Update all, to update all the matches. Update one, in which the component will only update the first matching record. Ignore, in which the source row will be ignored when multiple matches are found. Raise an error, an exception will be reported when multiple matches are found. Enable the case-insensitive matching option to have case-insensitive matching performed for the records. The Ignore Unchanged Fields option allows you to ignore any fields that have not been changed in the target system. Moving to the columns page, you will see that some fields are already mapped. This is because the component maps the fields from upstream to the destination fields if the label value matches. By clicking on the Map Unmapped Fields button, the component will try to map any unmapped Active Directory attributes by matching their names with the input columns from upstream components. In the list of metadata, you would notice that the _container path is a column. This needs to be mapped with the container path values coming in from the source in order to set the right path in your Active Directory. By default, custom attributes cannot be detected in the destination component. However, in the columns page of the Active Directory destination component, there is an Add button to manually add the custom field. If you select this button, you can add custom fields by entering the field name, data type, and the length. Once all columns are mapped as required, you can go ahead and choose the key fields for the matching criteria. It can either be one field or a combination of multiple fields. Now, let's go back to the general page and choose the Azure Active Directory Connection Manager. There are 4 actions supported when Azure AD is chosen, and they are create, update, delete, and update photo. And once the action is chosen, the object can be selected. When you choose update action, it can be seen that the record matching settings like record identifier, handling of multiple matches, etc. are enabled. These are available only for update action in Azure AD instance. There is also an additional option called Send Datetime Values in UTC format available for create and update actions when Azure Active Directory connection is selected. Let's select Create Action and choose the destination object. In the columns page, as we had seen before, the columns with identical field names are already mapped. You could unmap or perform additional mappings if required. The Add button gives you the option to add extension attributes for Azure Active Directory, and saving it will add the extension attributes to the existing metadata. The error handling page allows you to specify how errors should be handled when they happen. There are 3 options available: fail on error, redirect rows to error output, ignore error. When the redirect rows to error output option is selected, rows that fail to write to the Active Directory will be redirected to the error output of the destination component. In the section that says enable columns for default output, you can select more columns available to be a part of the default output. Let's select redirect rows to error output and save and close the component. In the designer, drag and drop 2 dummy destination components, and then connect the default output and error output to each. And when you open the pipeline and check the output metadata for the default output, you would see that the newly created record ID and the isNew Boolean field that we chose in the error handling page is a part of it along with the source data. And similarly, in the output metadata for the error output, the error code, error column, and error message fields are present along with the input data. Now, let's look at the LDAP components that comes along with the Directory Services Toolkit. Within the package, right-click on the Connection Manager section. From the list that comes up, choose the LDAP Connection Manager by KingswaySoft. Double-click on it or select Add to open up the Connection Manager user interface. In the LDAP Domains section, the Server field lets you specify the name or address of the LDAP instance that you want to connect to. The port is used to specify the port with which you want to connect to your LDAP. The default port number is 389, which can be modified. There are 10 types of authentication modes that are supported: Anonymous, Basic, Negotiate, NTLM, Digest, Sysli, TPA, Man, External, and Kerberos. In our example, let's choose Basic and enter the username and password for our LDAP instance. Once done, click on Test Connection to verify the connection. If you're required to choose session options, the field lets you select them from the list, namely sealing, signing, and SSL. When SSL is selected, SSL settings are unlocked, where you could choose the certificate validation from the drop-down list. If manually specified certificate authorities are chosen, then you could pick the certificate from either the certificate store using the ellipsis button, or you could choose the option to pick the certificate file from the file system. Verify your configuration once again, and you could save and close the connection manager. Once you have the connection manager set up, drag and drop the LDAP source component from the SSIS toolbox within a data flow task. Double-click to open the source user interface and choose the connection manager from the list of available ones. Based on the user permissions, the source object drop-down lists all of the currently supported objects which you can read from. The container path option lets you specify the directory path that you want to narrow your search scope to. You can either enter it manually or click on the ellipsis button to choose the path from the browser that comes up. You may use the search criteria to filter particular records according to your requirement. The LDAP search criteria filter follows the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol LDAP filtering format. In the example below, we have equated a display name against a string value to get the results filtered out. You could also click on Insert Variable to use a variable within the expression to make it dynamic at runtime. Navigate to the columns page of the LDAP source component, which will show you all available attributes from the object that you specified on the general page. You can choose to read all columns or choose only those that are required in your data flow. This is a recommended approach with respect to performance. You can click on Hide Unselected Fields to only see those fields that are selected. On the top of the grid, there is an Add button to manually add any custom fields that you may have. If you select this button, you can enter the name of the field and then select the appropriate data type from the list that shows up. And finally, choose the length as required. Click on OK to add the custom field to the metadata. The data type can be toggled wherever allowed to accommodate for larger lengths if required. Click on OK to save and close the component. Moving to the LDAP destination component, we have added a data spawner component to act as a dummy source for the data flow. From the SSIS toolbox, drag and drop the LDAP destination component and connect the source to it. Choose the connection manager from the available ones in the list. The action option allows you to specify how data should be returned to LDAP. There are currently 4 supported action types available. Create, to create in new objects. Update, to update in existing objects based on primary key field. Delete, to delete from objects. And move, to move or rename an object. In the columns page, perform the mappings of the destination fields as required. And click on Hide Unmapped Fields to only view those that are mapped. By default, custom attributes cannot be detected in the destination component. However, in the columns page of the LDAP destination component, there is an Add button to manually add the custom field. If you select this button, you can add custom fields by entering the field name, data type, and the length. The error handling page allows you to specify how errors should be handled when they happen. There are 3 options available: fail on error, redirect rows to error output, ignore error. When the redirect rows to error output option is selected, rows that failed to write to LDAP will be redirected to the error output of the destination component. In the section that says Enable Columns for Default Output, you can select more columns available to be a part of the default output. Let's select Redirect Rows to Error Output and save and close the component. In the designer, drag and drop 2 dummy destination components, and then connect the default output and error output to each. And when you open the pipeline and check the output metadata for default output, you would see that distinguished name field that we chose in the error handling page is a part of it along with the source data. And similarly, in the output metadata for the error output, the error code, error column, and error message fields are present along with the input data. Now, let's look at the Google Directory components that comes along with the Directory Services Toolkit. Within the package, right-click on the Connection Manager section. From the list that comes up, choose the Google Directory Connection Manager by KingswaySoft. Double-click on it, or select Add to open up the Connection Manager user interface. We support OAuth authentication, and in order to create a token, click on the button that says Generate Token File. This button opens up a dialog box in order to sign in to your Google Directory instance to generate a new authentication token. For our demo purpose, we choose KingswaySoft app. Note that this app is a publicly shared app which is provided mainly for convenience so that you can get started with our software without going through the process of creating an app. We would recommend you create your own app to connect to your instance, in which case you have better control of the access and also the token generated. In the dialog box, you can enter the client ID and client secret from the OAuth app and the scope and redirect URL as well. And you can check the PKCE option to enable it if it is required. When the option Use Default Browser to Sign In is checked, the Sign In and Authorize button will open your default web browser in order to complete the OAuth authentication. When this option is unchecked, the Sign In and Authorize button will complete the entire authentication process inside the toolkit. Click on Sign In and Authorize and follow the prompts to log in and authorize the app. This also lets you provide the required access levels. Once done, provide an alphanumeric password and save the token file. Click on Test Connection button to verify the connection. Moving over to the advanced settings, the proxy mode option allows you to specify how you want to configure the proxy server settings. There are 3 options available: No Proxy, Auto Detect, and Manual. And the proxy authentication required field can be checked to enter additional credentials for the proxy if required. The timeout option allows you to specify a timeout value in seconds for the connection. The default value is 120 seconds. The API throttling rate option allows you to restrict how many requests you want to send to Google Directory per second. This rate is set to 10, and you can adjust upward from there to optimize your throughput without exceeding the rate limit. The retry on intermittent errors is designed to help recover from possible intermittent outages or disruption of service. It prevents the integration process from stopping due to temporary issues. Enabling this option will allow service calls to be retried for certain failures. A service call may be retried up to 4 times at different backoff intervals before an exception is fired. Click on OK to save and close the Connection Manager. Once you have the Connection Manager set up, drag and drop the Google Directory source component from the SSIS toolbox within a data flow task. Double-click to open the source user interface and choose the Connection Manager from the list of available ones. The source object drop-down lists available objects which you can read from. When an object is chosen, the mandatory filter parameters populate automatically with the default value against it, and you could choose to click on the ellipsis button and change the format of the value as required. The paging size option allows you to specify how many records you want to retrieve each time, and the default value is 100, which can be adjusted. You can specify additional filter parameters so that the source component only returns those records that satisfy such filter parameters. If a filter parameter has a yellow asterisk beside it, it means that the parameter is required and a value must be provided. Note that filter fields may vary from object to object depending on endpoints. The search criteria field can be used to specify queries as allowed by Google Directory API. This field is available for a few endpoints such as users, groups, mobile devices, etc., and there are certain restrictions when using the search for each allowed object. Click on the Insert Variable button that allows you to add variables to your search criteria query in order to parameterize the query. Clicking the Refresh Component button causes the component to retrieve the latest metadata and update each field to its most recent metadata. And the blue FX icon launches the SSIS Expression Editor to enable dynamic update of the properties at runtime. The columns page of the source component shows you all available attributes from the endpoint that you specified on the general page. On the top left of the grid, you can see a checkbox which can be used to toggle the selection of all available fields. This is a productive way to check or uncheck all available fields. The data types, wherever allowed, can be toggled as necessary. Now let's look at the destination component for Google Directory. We have added a data spawner component to act as a dummy source for the data flow. From the SSIS toolbox, drag and drop the Google Directory destination component and connect the source to it. Choose the Connection Manager from the available ones in the list. The Destination Object option allows you to specify which object to write data to. The Destination Object drop-down lists all available objects that you can write the data. The Action option allows you to specify how data should be returned to Google Directory, and depending on the action chosen, the requirement for mapping would vary. The batch size lets you specify how many records to send per service call to Google Directory. Clicking the Refresh Component button causes the component to retrieve the latest metadata and update each field to its most recent metadata. When Map Unmapped Fields button is clicked, the component will try to map any unmapped attributes by matching their names with the input columns from the upstream components. And the blue FX icon launches the SSIS expression editor to enable dynamic updates of the properties at runtime. The columns page of the Google Directory destination component allows you to map the columns from upstream components to the Google Directory fields. You could map the required fields and click on Hide Unmapped Fields button to view only the mapped ones. The error handling page allows you to specify how errors should be handled when they happen. There are 3 options available: fail on error, redirect rows to error output, ignore error. When the redirect rows to error output option is selected, rows that fail to write to Google Directory will be redirected to the error output of the destination component. In the section that says Enable Columns for Default Output, you can select more columns available to be a part of the default output. Let's select Redirect Rows to Error Output and save and close the component. In the designer, drag and drop 2 dummy destination components, and then connect the default output and error output to each. And when you open the pipeline and check the output metadata for default output, you would see that newly created record ID field that we chose in the error handling page is a part of it along with the source data. And similarly, in the output metadata for error output, the error code, error column, and error message fields are present along with the input data. We hope this video has helped in understanding the working and features of our SSIS Integration Toolkit for Directory Services, which includes connectivity to Active Directory, LDAP, and Google Directory. Thank you for watching. KingswaySoft. Data integration made easy.